All right, so my second lid is going to be a gallery lid. So first I'm going to create a gallery, and then I'm going to put a lid on it. So I've intentionally made this thick. I actually brought it in a little bit, which is not very centered, but I've made this thick. It really needs to be centered for what I'm about to do. So I'm going to take a moment to really make sure that that's pretty well centered. Doesn't seem to want to be perfectly on center. And then you're going to need, there's a variety of different tools you could use. This is the one that I thought was probably going to work best for this because it has a kind of a squareness to it. It's going to allow me to push kind of straight down on that. Now there are other things I could have used for that. I figured I probably could have used my wood knife, but that curve kind of bothered me. One way or the other, you can see that I basically pushed half of the lid, half of that lip down to create a gallery. This is called a gallery lip on a pot. You do want to have a nice, you don't want to leave that particularly sharp. So I'm going to take my finger and kind of clean that up a little bit. Going to keep it shut. So I've got a gallery lip. So now the lid that I'm going to make is going to sit on that gallery. Now I could do a lid similar to this, except just flat. I could just make this like a plate, just completely flat with a handle on it, and I could make it the right size so it would sit there, and that would be easy enough to do. So I end up with a flat disc with a handle, and I could have thrown it the same way I threw this one. The only difference is I wouldn't have lifted it up, I would have left it flat. But instead, what I'm actually going to do is the opposite of this. I'm going to have the handle, and then this part is going to go this direction. So I'm going to create a domed lid with a knob on top. Now I'm not going to be able to create the knob at this time, but I'm going to leave myself clay to trim that knob later on. So let's start by cutting this thing off and setting that aside. I'll set it over there. I can get my fingers underneath it. I do actually need to take a moment to make sure that I am testing this thing, getting this measurement. Now you don't have to throw the lid on the same day you throw the handle. Sometimes people do this. They'll take the measurement, they'll put that down here, and they'll make a mark somehow on this thing so that they have the mark later on. So you could just make some sort of indication on here so that you know how big it was beforehand. But I'm gonna make this now. I just threw this thing, now I'm gonna make a lid that size. In fact, no, actually I'm gonna make, yeah, that's fine. I was gonna do that, I was gonna reverse this, have it the other way around, but I think this is probably best for this one. So I'm gonna take this off here, set that over there for a second. And I'm gonna take this, lay that out flat, this thing on here like that, those out of the way. That did not want to stick. This is going to seem rather similar to throwing off the hump to some extent. If you watch Great Pottery Throwdown and you haven't know what they're talking about, throwing off the hump. So basically, I'm going to bring that in like that. Turn it into basically a doorknob. A little bit. I'm gonna leave a lot for there to trim off later. But I'm going to come here. And I don't know if you can tell or not, but I just left a massive amount of clay underneath there. So I'm gonna grab this and I'm just gonna pull that out like that. And up like this. I'm going to pull a rather significant dome lid for this. A nice little bowl shape with a significant amount of clay down there. Wow, I nailed it. It's really pretty close to what I wanted. However, I'm going to that in a little bit. Now, once again, I could easily, if I had a needle tool, I could easily trim some off here and then make sure this is just the right thickness, and I could adjust it. I go, hey, you know what, this is too tall. I don't want it to be that tall. I could easily cut it down. I could tweak this thing as much as I want. I can cut off as much as I want until I'm left with a shape that I'm happy with that has the right diameter to fit on my gallery. I definitely want it to be a little small. I don't want it to be too tight. I think I'm actually just gonna leave it the way it is, and I'll trim it to make it fit. I might trim a little bit. If you look back at the pot there, I think that's a little thick right there, so I could trim a little off that if I wanted to. I can trim the outside of this and the inside of that to make these things fit later. But what's most significant is that I will center that thing on a wheel head, and I'll for trimming purposes. When it dries out a little bit, I'll center it, I'll hunker it down with some lugs, I'll get it nice and centered. I will take this thing and flip it over on top of that, and I'll trim it right in place, right on top of the pot. And that will allow me to make adjustments to this and that to make sure it fits real well, and I can trim this knob into whatever shape that I want to trim it into. All right, there's your second lid for a lidded pot.